I'm delighted to say Jess McFadyen is with us to talk to us about the Formula One Carnival as it continues on. Jess, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hi, yeah,
So
very,
I've
very
literally
well.
just
You
lost my
caught me
earphones
just
here and can't
before I'm
hear a
actually.
thing. So apologies. Shane, you far away there?
He's lost his earphones, Jess, so we can't hear you, but I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, hi.
Jess, good morning. I suppose we need to bookend Monaco and look ahead to Baku this morning, but the talk is Sergio Perez. Everyone is talking about Sergio Perez. It was all Max Verstappen, and now all of a sudden Red.
Wow, the Gremlins are with us this morning. He was going to ask about Sergio Perez there, Jess. Tell us about what's going on with him at the moment and why this bubbling up has happened.
Yeah, I mean, the past two races for Sergio Perez can't have really been any more different. Monaco, he's coming off the back of a win, which is amazing. It's going to have pumped him full of confidence and actually put him way up there in the title fight for this year, up there with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. And we're going into a track that he has had a lot of success in. He's got one win there, but he's also appeared on the podium quite a number of times as well. He's probably, when it comes down to it, one of the most successful drivers around Baku, actually, which when you look at podium finishes and where he's come, it's a race that delivers a lot of unexpected results. So I think he's going to be going into this weekend feeling pretty good about his chances, and I guess has put to bed a few of the maybe the rumours and rumblings that Red Bull weren't going to let him win. Whether or not I'm ready to put that to bed yet, we'll have to see how Baku plays out, because I think Red Bull are really going to want to use the momentum that they've got so far to make sure that Ferrari can't come anywhere close to them. Charles is obviously still leading the championship as we go into Baku, but Red Bull do feel like they've got the momentum, and they've got two race-winning drivers this year.
It's funny because Christian Horner, rewarded Perez with a new contract, but even before that, they agreed, I think, before that Monaco win last weekend, Jess. But when you look at the title race now, like you mentioned, Charles Leclerc at the top of it at the minute, but you can't rule out Verstappen. It's hard to rule out Perez, and even Carlos Sainz is there. Like, is this? I'm touching wood as I say this because more in hope than anything else. But are we looking at a 3 or 4 horse race in the Formula One Drivers' Championship?
It would be nice, wouldn't it? It would definitely be good going into the last stage of the season with a bit more of a kind of 2012-esque situation where anyone could win it. Whether or not we're going to get there, I'm not sure. There's a lot at stake, and when there's a lot at stake, the teams tend to kind of double down on their prize horse, really. So whether or not we are allowed to get into much of the season where we'll see it get closer, I'm not too sure. But based on kind of knowing the two teams, Red Bull is Max Verstappen's team, and I think Ferrari, Carlos Sainz has had a kind of rocky start. He had a good finish, obviously, in Monaco with his P2 finish, which is great, but he's still yet to produce race-winning results. So we'll have to see. It's still early doors, right? I don't want to kind of put any doom and gloom or negativity on the season too early, but we're starting to get into that period where summer break's not too far away. Ferrari have had positions where they've made mistakes and they've thrown away a lot of points. So they're going to want to double down on how do we win this championship. And so we might see more of that whole like team orders situation playing out. And I do think that if you're looking at the two teams, Charles Leclerc is Ferrari's boy and Max Verstappen is definitely Red Bull's.
Like when you look at race strategy, Jess, that is something that kind of comes to the fore, because a lot of people, who maybe are bit part Formula One fans will look at a team like Red Bull and say, "Oh, this is great for Red Bull. They've got two drivers competing in Verstappen and Perez," but that brings with it complications as well in terms of race strategy. If you've two drivers very close in 1 and 2 towards the end of a race, and the driver in second looks to be gaining on the leader, there are decisions to be made there from a race strategy perspective. I don't know what did you make of the comments from Max's father, Jos Verstappen, in the wake of Max's third place finish in Monaco? I mean, clearly, pointedly criticising and critiquing the Red Bull team strategy. Obviously, he's going to be out there and bat for his son, but quite extraordinary for Jos to be critiquing his son's team and the strategy like that.
Are we surprised? I don't know. I mean, it's
Maybe
kind
not.
of. I wasn't surprised. I mean, I was surprised that maybe they made it so public. and how eloquently he wrote the complaint to Red Bull. I mean, that's not to take anything from Jos. He's a very intelligent man, obviously, but it was odd in terms of, like you say, you kind of we don't have any time for internal squabblings. Like, this season is as hot as last season, and teams can't afford any internal squabblings. But we know how pushy the Verstappens are. There's a reason why Max Verstappen has been number one driver there and has had the struggles of who their teammate is. It's very, very much politically, it's very skewed towards the Verstappens. So maybe that's just a reminder, a little warning shot from Jos there to say, look, this is all well and good, but you're backing my boy. And I think that's kind of where that was coming from. Whether or not Red Bull will take that to heart, we'll have to see. I mean, you hope that there's not going to be any major political moves. It's a strategy game, right? Formula One. You need to put your pawns where you're going to bring home the highest level result you can. And actually having a really good number two is so important for these teams. It can be the difference between winning or losing both championships. So they're going to want a strong driver in Sergio Perez to support Max Verstappen if that's their kind of positioning. So it is important to keep Sergio motivated, because if he becomes demotivated this early in the season, then you're going to start suffering, because 1 versus 2, when it comes to kind of charging out at the front, can mean a much trickier race, even if you have the fastest car, the fastest package for that circuit. Not having backup, not having a wingman. I've just gone to see the new Top Gun film, so I've probably got that in my head. But not having a wingman makes you vulnerable. So you need to have that balance. It is a team sport, even if the individuals are the ones that tend to shine.
Give us a quick review of the movie there. Any good?
Loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it was proper throwback nostalgia stuff, but I came out with a big smile on my face, so I would definitely encourage people to go see it.
The tiger parenting of the Verstappens is just a little interesting tangent, if we could get into it for a second here.
Sure.
He's still very young, like he's still only 24, so there's 2 decades or like 15 more years of him being at the top of Formula One if he wants it, right? Like, that was obviously always the plan when they decided that they were going to turn their son into the machine that he is.
100%. I mean, I don't envy sons or daughters of Formula One drivers. I think that must be quite a tricky place to be. I mean, you've got Mick Schumacher, who has had something very similar, and the world puts a different kind of magnifying glass over you when you have a name that went before you. It's kind of quite daunting. Obviously, Max is already quite successful, and he's young, and he's got plenty of seasons in front of him. So, yeah, I think it was always the game plan, I think. And Max had such a roller coaster career in terms of his trajectory has been incredible. It's been exponential. He jumped from Formula 3 to Formula 1, which is just still unheard of, to make that jump from such a junior series into Formula 1. And there was a lot of criticism about that at the time. Is he ready? Clearly he was, and he's got the results. But yeah, I don't think maybe I would be tough enough to have that kind of pressure, which is why I'm sat here talking about it rather than racing cars. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because it's one that I've also compared to Lewis Hamilton's upbringing. Jos Verstappen and Anthony Hamilton probably couldn't have 2 more different paternal styles. Anthony is very encouraging and more kind of tactile in his approach. He's very you get that kind of emotional feeling, and you see that in Lewis's style and his approach. He can be quite an emotional feeling driver, whereas Max is cold and calculated, as is Jos. So you get those kinds of mirroring. You can see that impact on their driving style, which is, I'm sure there should be studies on it in terms of like how that, what is the better kind of route. I mean, you've got the Richard Williams and the Williams sisters is kind of a very similar kind of maybe a something to follow there as well. But yeah, it can't be easy being Max Verstappen, but he's had a lot of success based on it.
Was his dad any good as a driver? Because he didn't have a lot of success, but that doesn't necessarily mean he might just not have been in good cars. Was he considered? I don't remember him being kind of talked about as somebody who was being done out of a good car, but maybe he was a brilliant driver, just never got the opportunities.
He definitely had his moments. It was obviously a completely different era of racing when Jos was racing. But yeah, I think again, like, so much of being a Formula One driver and your successes is so much of it is talent, yes, but so much of it is luck in terms of what team you end up racing for, how competitive they end up being, and also who else are you driving against? Because it's the same thing that was talked about with Valtteri Bottas. Being Lewis Hamilton's teammate kind of makes you pale into insignificance in comparison to the stellar driver and record holder that Lewis Hamilton is. So, you know, had Lewis Hamilton never come in, would we be talking about Valtteri Bottas as an amazing driver? It's so much of it is to do with luck and who you end up getting pipped against. And, you know, Jos's era was also a very competitive era. So, yeah, I think to be a Formula One driver, full stop, you have to be an incredible driver. So I think that's, you know, as much as we look at drivers' performances and, you know, it's our jobs to critique or to make comment on them, the 20 drivers that we've got on the grid, they still have to have their absolute skill for driving an F1 car in the first place. So, yeah, I think people would never say that he was an unsuccessful driver, but compared to Max's championship winning season and his absolute ream of podium finishes, race wins, he's actually now, thanks to Monaco, he's now equal on Red Bull's most successful driver. And when you think that Sebastian Vettel was a 4-time champion with Red Bull and Max has already equaled him on success, and he's still got so much to go, that kind of shows you about where Max is, really.
Jess, if we touch focus or move focus over to Mercedes just for the moment, and I'm looking ahead to Baku and this street circuit at the weekend, and Mercedes traditionally, I guess, in this year have maybe struggled around the slow corners, and it's a track that they might potentially struggle at. But start of the year when George Russell came on board with Mercedes, you're thinking, right, this is a proper rival for Lewis Hamilton. This is someone who's going to push him on to more world titles, and really it hasn't quite yet materialized in that fashion. Like, Russell, I think, is the only driver on the grid to have achieved points in every race. He's probably the most consistent. You know, he's been 3rd, 4th, 5th thereabouts in every race. Mm-hmm. Like, is Russell's consistency highlighting a per Lewis Hamilton this season, or how do you see it?
How funny, you know, a year ago Lewis and Max were fighting for the championship, and this year we're already kind of writing off Lewis Hamilton. I don't buy it for 1 second. I don't think it changes that much. We can't discount Lewis Hamilton from anything, I don't think. I think what we're seeing, and this still needs to be confirmed by Mercedes, but from what we've heard and what I think, and this could be completely wrong, so don't hold me to it, this is not verified, but I would not be surprised if Mercedes was using Lewis Hamilton's experience and skill to run a more experimental setup. We've seen already in races they have been running different setups on those two cars, and I think what Mercedes is probably doing is using Lewis Hamilton to get to the bottom of their issues, because they have big issues, and letting George find his confidence and just focus on racing. So, you know, when we're looking at points, yes, there's a massive discrepancy now between George and Lewis, but I think that is a tactical approach from Mercedes in order to get to the bottom of their issues with their current setup. It's a very experimental philosophy that they've gone with the cars today. I mean, obviously, when we saw that they had no side pods, everyone was like, what the hell is going on? Like, why? How have you brought a F1 car with no side pods? And obviously, they've been suffering the most probably with the porpoising effect of the bouncing. And that has obviously led to them not really having clean weekends and kind of not competing at the front like we're used to seeing them. But I think George is a phenomenal racer. I think he's shown that. And so it's not to discount his consistency, as you say, top 5 finishes in every race, only driver to do that. It's very impressive. But I don't think we can all of a sudden say Lewis has lost it. That's just unfair. And just, it doesn't happen like that. Like, you don't all of a sudden overnight lose your ability or lose your kind of, you know, 7-time world champion. That doesn't just disappear overnight. But a lot of it is down to the machinery in Formula One. We know that. So yeah, I think it's, the scoreboard isn't reflecting what is going on in terms of the skills of those drivers. I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and the other teams have already said that they're quite worried about Mercedes making a comeback. They are Mercedes. They know what they're doing. So I think as soon as they tie it all together, we'll see both drivers racing for podium finishes, if not wins.
Can I just pick up on something you said there, Jess, and attach it to another driver? Like, you don't lose your talent overnight. Like, if we just touch on Daniel Ricciardo as someone who, with McLaren, hasn't quite reached the heights expected of him. I know he's been kind of under the shadow in some regards of Lando Norris, but I almost think of writer's block as, you know, Ricciardo is a driver we know that has the talent. He's just at the minute struggling to get it out there on the page. Like, is he someone who, if he doesn't buck up quick, I know is it 4 races now in a row without points for him? We know he's a marketable driver. We've all seen, you know, the interviews with him and the character that he brings to the sport. But if he doesn't buck up with McLaren this season, can you see him moving to someone else next season? I look at a team like, maybe, you know, if, say for example, Sebastian Vettel was to hypothetically leave Aston Martin, that might be a nice fit for Daniel Ricciardo. Do you see Ricciardo as someone whose time at McLaren is running out? And if so, where could you see him heading next season, hypothetically speaking?
That's the $1 million question, really, or multi-million-dollar question, depending on what kind of a deal he can get. But he's running out of options massively. And the biggest thing for Daniel that he's always said is that, as much as there's criticism being thrown at him and his ability, his criticism is also with, well, come on, guys, you know I'm a good driver. He's a race winner. He was extremely successful with Red Bull. It was, again, that whole dichotomy of Red Bull becoming Max Verstappen's team that made him want to leave. And so then he had to find other teams to join, and he had to kind of put his money on a midfield team that was going to improve. And if you were going to do that, then he obviously went to Renault, now Alpine, in his first switch, which was a massive shock to everybody. I still remember the announcement coming out and being like, what on earth is going on here? But it's because he was hoping that Renault, being a manufacturer, would invest enough to bring a competitive car, and that kind of never really materialized. So then he took his chances and moved to McLaren. Again, I would say that was a smart move. But as we kind of touched on with Lewis, in Formula One, you have to have that perfect balance of car and driver in order to get the results that you need. And as we've seen, when you are comparing teammates, some drivers take to their cars a lot easier than others. And if you are the lead driver, the team tends to build the car around that driver, or will push for setups and that will suit that driving style. And so if you don't have that driving style and you haven't got the ability to adapt your driving style to the car, your results are going to suffer. But it's a balance, right? It is a team sport. It's not star drivers just going out there and showing off. There's so many people behind the scenes that have to make Formula One work. And I think, to your question, where is he going to go? There aren't really many more places he can. And I think he will definitely not want to be at a team that is, you know, chasing a singular point. That's not what he wants, and that's not where he sees himself. But there are only 20 seats on the grid. And as you say, like when you're not pulling in the performances, when you're not showing, you know, your lick the stamp and send it movements that we know Ricciardo for, your value, your market value dips. So, you know, will the team want Ricciardo? It's actually quite a scary thing to think that he might come to the end of his tenure. I'm sure, I really hope that that's not the case. I hope that either McLaren give him a little more time. He's meant to have a contract for next year with McLaren. But for the first time, just before Monaco, we had Zach Brown coming out and saying, you know, there are clauses to his contract that work for him and some that don't, in terms of there needs to be performance clauses that mean if you don't bring the results, then we can terminate this contract early. I don't see McLaren doing that. They don't really have anybody waiting in the wings to bring in. The one pawn that I'm really interested to know where they're going to go next year is Pierre Gasly. Because with Sergio Perez signing his contract and him being a Red Bull driver, he's kind of stuck at AlphaTauri. So I don't know how many more seasons he's going to want to do that. He's going to be sniffing around and wanting other places. Maybe McLaren would be somewhere that he would look to. We're just going to have to see. But yeah, Ricciardo is a massive question mark this year.